On this episode of Rewired to Launch, we're going to be talking about the mind-body connection, and specifically how anxiety shows up in our lives, in our minds, and in our bodies. I'm sitting down with Sarah Novak, who is a breathwork practitioner, and she's going to be talking about how we can actually use the modality of intentional breathwork in order to overcome anxiety and heal past traumas. This is a topic that is near and dear to me, and there is so much that we have to talk about. So let's get right into it. First, I'd love to know what brought you into this.
My story is so funny. So I actually was in health and wellness, and I was like a fitness coach. I did macro coaching, and I have a bodybuilding background. So I got into this world from that. So I created a coaching program. I did that for a couple of years, and I had a mindset element to it. But I kept feeling like something was missing from that because I was using mindset in the mind, but I wasn't healing it in the body. And I felt like all of these stuck emotions and stuff were landing in my client's body, especially with body image around eating and all these other things. So I kept diving into it. And so I found a meditation practice, and I started practicing that. But what I became aware of was that my thoughts got louder and louder and louder. And I do deal with a lot of anxiety. So that anxiety almost propelled it. And the more I became aware of it, the louder and noisier it got. So honestly, I just this sounds really woo-woo, and it just is kind of funny that I kind of put it out there and was like, okay, I need something else to like come to me and see whatever that is. And it wasn't like an intentional thing. It was more just in my head. I was like, okay, what else is there that I can find that will help me with it? So I got on Instagram just one day, whatever, I was just checking it, and Breathwork popped up, and it was actually a certification program that popped up. And I was like, okay, what is this? I've never heard of this. So she had a free audio. I downloaded it. I did it and was like, okay, like I totally feel the effects of this. Like, this is amazing. So without even really knowing much more of that, I signed up for the certification program. And 2 months later, I was in San Diego we had like an in-person 5-day retreat. So I was there, and I had no idea what to expect. Even on the interview call of the certification program, they're like, so why do you want to do this? I'm like, I don't know. I was just led here. Like, this is just something, like, I was totally transparent, and they all laughed. And I was just like, I don't know, but I feel like I'm called to be here. So I went there. We breathed for an hour to 2 hours, broken up every single day, just learning different techniques and facilitating, basically learning the program. And after that week, I felt completely different. I approached life completely different. I had a lot more clarity. I was more serene. My anxiety was like at an all-time low. And I just was like, okay, this is the element that I was missing, because what breathwork essentially does is it gets you into the body and outside of the mind. So that was that missing component that I found for my mindset work, when really it just turned into body work.
That's amazing. And it's funny you say that. I started Rewired to Launch talking about mindset management, but I'm finding that it's mind and body. Like, there's such a connection that it's really hard to separate the two. And it's so beneficial to incorporate the two. And it's funny that you said woo-woo earlier, because with these topics, you always get a little, you always feel a little funny when you're like trying to explain it to someone that's very new to it. I actually did a 10-day Vipassana meditation. And when I came back from it, I was trying to explain it to people what it was. I was like so excited. And it's kind of like, it makes you feel woo-woo, right? Like, it's like, you're like, I swear it's not a cult. Like, I swear, like, there's actual reasoning behind why it works. When you tell someone just breathe, that sounds kind of ridiculous, right? If you don't fully understand what the concept is and what it means. So that's why, I wanted to sit down with you and get to understand why breath work works and what it entails and the impacts of it.
Yeah. And honestly, breathwork, the easiest way that I can explain it without doing it, and later I'll do like a little sample so everyone can see and you can see too. But the easiest way for me to explain it is we breathe just we just do it. We don't have to think about it. It's just something that happens. It's just a part of us as being human beings. But when you do something with anything very intentionally and you focus on it and you're really there for a purpose, and the purpose that I take all of my clients through is very, very intentional. We're going into a session with an intention. So that either means to access safety in the body, to trust your intuition, whatever that may be, whatever that comes up for my clients, releasing repressed rage or anger or sadness. It's very intentional and we're working with that. But the pathway that we're working that through is just focusing on a breath pattern. So we're just breathing. We're not focusing on stillness. We're not focusing on sitting with ourselves, because that can be really, really, really uncomfortable for a lot of people, because in this world we're extremely disconnected from our bodies. That's just how our society works. We have busied ourselves with everything external, wanting to learn and think our way through healing. We're like, how can I find something to heal me? What can I do to make me not feel this? What can I do to make me not feel that? When in reality, we have to feel it and embody it and truly understand what that feeling is and where that feeling is truly coming from in order for us to be able to release it. And we release it through moving all that energy around. And we do that by bringing the breath in through the inhale and releasing it through the exhale. And we really don't have to think about it. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to let go. We don't have to do anything except for just really very intentionally breathe. And it's a really beautiful thing because it's so simple, yet it's so powerful. And every single person on this planet has access to breathing. We just don't know how to do it intentionally. And so I think it's a really beautiful thing because it's available to every single person. You just have to learn how to do it correctly.
I actually have struggled with anxiety most of my life. I didn't even actually realize it was anxiety till I was in my mid-20s. So I went most of my life not even understanding, the symptoms and the results and the behavior that I had kind of wired into myself through my struggles. And it was only when I started to actually learn about meditation. And when I talk about meditation, it's more focusing on the breath. It's not the intentional breath work that you're talking about. So even with that, like I would sit in silence and be confused. Like I'd sit there wondering, like, am I doing it right? Like, is this working? You're just kind of like all over the place in your mind, right? But it was only then when I actually started to learn slowly how meditation works and how focusing on your breath works, that I realized just naturally, I tend to hold my breath. Like if I'm anxious, I actually like it's not something I do intentionally, and it's not even something I realize, but the moment I get out of an anxious situation, I realize like the first thing I do is like just because there's so much like that I've just been holding tightly. And until you actually realize what meditation does, what breath work does, you don't realize how you're breathing. It's like you said, we're very unaware of how we breathe day to day because we're so disconnected from our bodies. So I actually, in preparation for talking to you, I did a 7-minute breathwork exercise through the Pause website. And oh my gosh, it was something like I've never experienced before. The intensity of the breathing, I just all I did was focus on it from start to finish. And my whole body was heating up. Like I actually felt tension in my body gone at the end of only 7 minutes. So I found that amazing and incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I was so blown away by the first time I did it. And I was just like, what the heck did I just do? Because really, I'm just breathing in a certain pattern. It's so incredible what it can unlock. And especially with anxiety. And that's the thing that I work with stress and anxiety, but really anxiety is a byproduct of our bodies responding to stress. So when we are welling up so much stress and we aren't processing it and releasing it, anxiety comes. And that's why I went through most of my life until I hit about 29, that I was just kind of I didn't even identify with the word anxiety. I identified with the word stress, but never anxiety, until I realized what that feeling really was through meditation, through all these other things, and studying what stress and anxiety really was. did I start identifying with that? So I'm like you, where I went through most of my life just responding to everything in life and just kind of like being emotionally triggered, for a lack of a better term, just kind of reacting to everything. Where once I started to really intentionally do a breathwork practice, I started to be able to understand how I can become aware of my reactions before I react. And I'm not perfect on this, obviously. There's still reactions that I do, but it brought me a different awareness and it put me more into my body. And I could understand, like, okay, right now, like I'm experiencing these feelings of a lot of anxiety. And that's when I need to do breath work a little bit more. Or that's when I need to slow down, or that's when I need to relax and just take a little bit of a break. And it's brought me to that awareness more and more. And the more that I practice it, the more aware that I really become of it. So it's a really beautiful thing. And especially with the method of breathwork that I do, I was certified in pause breathwork. I was at the first class, and that was the only one she did the live one with, because COVID happened for her next group. So, and I don't even think she's doing live anymore. I think it's now all online. So we were the only ones that did that in-person seminar, which was actually pretty cool, that we got to work with her and stuff like that. But the way that she has structured the breathing is so different than any other type of modalities, really, because they're so intentional and you can do them for a very short amount of time. Like even some of the breath ones I could do them for a minute and you're still getting maximum results. I mean, not as much as if you're doing it for 45 minutes, but it's so intentional and so need-based and so focused on a very, very specific intention that you can propel yourself through that healing so much faster than you could with any other type of thing. And it's something that you can just stop and do like all the time. It's so beautiful.
Like what actually happens to your body? Like, why is it that this works?
Yeah. So when you're breathing in, it changes the alkalinity inside your body and it changes the pH. So I'm not a scientist and I'm not really into sciencey things. So I don't have this part memorized, but essentially what it's doing is you're breathing in and how your body is taking in all of that extra energy, all that extra air is changing the molecules inside your body and changing the alkalinity and the pH so that your brain chemistry is actually changing because you're taking in deeper breaths of air. That's the best way that I can explain it without getting into like science terms. That's why you're feeling all that tingling sensation and all that stuff, because on a science level, it's changing all the molecules within your body. And it's taking it like on a cellular level. And that's why you feel that tingling. That's why a lot of people get what's called tetany, which is essentially just a tightening of the muscles. So some people's hands get really tight or their mouth gets really tight. And that's because they are lacking a certain molecule, and that extra energy of breath is bringing in and changing that around. So essentially in a spiritual sense, that's the science sense. On a spiritual sense, it means that you have a lot of blocked emotions and a lot of stuck emotions that are in there. So it's welling up and trying to get out. But on a science level, what's happening is that your body is lacking a lot of those molecules and it's changing it around and it's causing that like tightness of the muscle, right? With my clients that come and work with me on private, they are going through a meditative style of breathing. And then I give them as quote unquote homework integrative. So what the two of the difference is, integrative is something that you can use to integrate into your life. You can do it while you're essentially quote unquote awake. You can do it while you're driving, while you're taking a walk, while you're doing dishes, in between meetings, in between phone calls. You can do it in your day-to-day, and they're very, very fast. They can take like 20, 30 seconds, a minute. Like you can do them very quickly. It's something that you can integrate into your life. Meditative breath work is they only have two different types of breathing patterns in that modality. And one is gentler and one is really deep. So depending on what's going on, and I use this part as my trauma-informed lens, depending on how much trauma they do have, I might take them into the gentle first and then go into the more intense, or I might just do gentle for a while on their sessions. I customize it based on the person and what they're going through and what they've been through. So essentially what they're doing is they're laying down just completely flat, and I'm guiding them through a meditative breathing session. I'm telling them how to breathe. I'm guiding them. I'm offering them support. I'm allowing them to feel safe, and I'm holding that massive amount of energy and space for them to allow themselves to really go deep within themselves, meet them at all points of their edges of themselves, and really go deep to really extract what it is that they're hiding and suppressing and pushing down on themselves, and bringing that up and welling it up and allowing them to like take it out. A lot of people don't have that support system. So essentially that's what I'm offering, is holding massive amount of space for their healing. Because a lot of people, especially with healing and from trauma informed things, people are very reluctant to go in that unless they have that container where someone is holding them, where I'm there for them and I can catch them if they fall, essentially. So that's what I'm doing. And a lot of times those sessions are a minimum of 20 minutes, but I like to take them up to 45. And I work with people who they're longer stints of containers, because healing isn't linear. So sometimes we can get through a problem, but then a different route will trigger it again, and it needs to be healed again, right? So I work with people on a 6-month container to really dive them through and making sure that we're really getting through to the root of everything and moving them through that.
I understand, obviously it's on a case-by-case basis. It's difficult to encompass everything into one package, but you know, say you're trying to heal from trauma, since you work with them on a 6-month period, is the goal to essentially completely eliminate it? Or, you know, are there situations that that you're not able to eliminate it? It's more that you kind of have strategies and tools anytime that you're triggered, anytime something new happens.
Yeah, so it depends on how deep their trauma goes, how deep someone's wound goes. I don't ever say like, okay, by the end of the 6 months, like your trauma is going to be gone, just because that's something that's impossible. And it might take a really long time for them to start working through that. But what I do is I help them move through it and understand their triggers, like you said, so that they can use things and become aware of what that trigger actually is. And the more they operate on a place of, okay, I'm aware of this trigger, this is happening to me right now, this is the tool that I can use to move around that trigger and move through it. The more they practice, that's like brain rewiring, right? Neuroplasticity. The more that you use a different response to a trigger, the more you're likely to use that response as an automatic response to whatever that's triggering you. It could be positive or negative. So if you have a negative response to it, and the more you do it over and over again, that becomes your baseline. And then when you're learning something new, like incorporating breath work into a new response, it takes time to learn how to use that as your baseline, right? So that's essentially what I'm doing, is teaching people to use a different baseline.
That is pretty much what happens with anxiety, isn't it? Where you have the fight or flight response when you're triggered, and your body then your body and your mind just programs itself based on whatever behavior is happening. And if you don't actually deal with it, then that is, like, negative or not, that is the programming that you have. And it's only through intentional work like this that you're able to rewire yourself and to kind of work backwards and learn new habits.
Yeah, because your brain, what it's just trying to do is just trying to keep you safe. It doesn't have any bad intentions. It doesn't really understand or know that a bear isn't going to come and get us and it's going to kill us. But the same way we respond to that stress is the way it responds to, like, someone getting in a car accident, but you're not in the car accident. It just is like, it's the same response. It thinks it's the same thing. So we may not be out in the wilderness anymore, living out there with extreme danger after us, but our brain thinks that we're in that grave of danger in our everyday life. So it responds that same way. And what we have to do is learn to teach our brain something different. And the only way that it knows that is our body's response. So truly, our body is like the beating heart of everything. Without a beating heart, you don't have anything. And our brain is just the driver of that heart. It just navigates how we move through life. And so we have to learn how to teach it to navigate and drive in a more safer way, where when we connect with our bodies through breath work, and we're dropping into that, we can actually tap into, okay, this is our navigation, this is our roadmap, this is where we go. And then the brain just uses that like, oh, this is our directions, we're going to go in this place. So when we teach it how, and it takes a while, neuroplasticity actually can take up to 65 to 70 days to rewire. A lot of people say it takes 30 days for a habit, but it's been finding out in scientific things that it takes anywhere from 65 to 70 days of doing a habit consistently in order for it to really rewire and change it. So it takes a lot of time to really get down and how to, you know, really reuse that driving force.
Yeah.
And you have to really connect with your source energy. And that's inside of your heart, and understanding and knowing what that visceral no and visceral yes means for you, because it's different for everyone. Some people are okay with some things and then they react a different way. And then other people are like, whoa, that's a huge trigger for me. Like that does not work for me. Right. So really what my work is to teach people what they are triggered by and how to use those triggers and respond in a really positive, like calm way. And it doesn't work perfectly 100% of the time because we're humans, right? Like that's just how we're designed and wired. But the more that we practice it intentionally, the more we can understand that awareness. And really, that's how you learn to let go of anything. Once you bring awareness to an emotion and a feeling and just sit with it, you know, if you're feeling really, really sad or really, really angry, and you just say, okay, so I'm really sad and I'm feeling really angry right now. And that's okay. Just that awareness, just that by itself will dissolve it, because you are allowing yourself the space to say, I'm allowed to feel sad and angry right now. And it's okay that I feel that way. And that's what a lot of people, you know, they suppress that. They say, I'm feeling sad and angry, but I shouldn't feel this way. It's wrong for me to feel this way. Like I need to feel happy all the time. And when we learn to just sit with every emotion in a neutral sense, like an emotion is just an emotion. They're fleeting. They move around a lot, right? We feel everything. But when we allow ourselves to experience the highs and the lows, our life will be so much more fulfilled because we are allowing ourselves to feel multifaceted, right? That's the part of being. If you take emotion out of a human existence, we would just be like gray matter, right? We would just be like robots. We wouldn't feel or anything. So actually feeling and emoting is a really, really beautiful thing, because we can feel high highs and low lows, and we can use both of those as a teacher. And so that's essentially what I do with breathwork.
I don't even know where to start, to be honest. Like I had so many like things triggering as you explain that, for me personally, just because it makes sense. I've been there. I get it. And I think I'm not sure. Obviously, everybody deals with anxiety differently, but I know for me personally, I always thought if I felt a negative emotion, suppress it, like you know, wrap it up, shove it in a box, and then get on with your day and deal with it and just plow through. And I think, you know, my teenage years into my 20s, I really strived on the fact that I worked well in high stress situations. Like that was always, you know, in a job interview on my resume, that was always like the first thing. I'm like, yeah, I'm great at handling stress. Like I'm so good at like working under pressure. And it worked for, I don't know, I guess like 25 years. And then it caught up to me. Yep. And I always thought I was strong because I like just put my feelings aside and never let my feelings affect whatever was going on, and whatever needed to get done got done. Mm-hmm. But now, like I'm in my mid 30s and I realize like, I don't want to adult anymore. Like I can't deal with it because it's like all these like, you know, like dusty old hidden emotions are now coming out, and you're just like, wait, I thought I dealt with you.
Yeah, you're like, I thought I got rid of you already. What's happening here? I totally resonate with everything you're saying, because that's exactly where I was at too. I was like, I'm perfect at stress. Like stress doesn't bother me. Like I can deal with all these multi things coming at me and I can handle it all. But in reality, what was happening was that I wasn't dealing with anything at all. And I was busying myself with work and priorities and to-do lists, to avoid how I was feeling. And it worked for me for a very long time. It was a survival system that I used in my childhood because I had a very stressful childhood. So I learned how to respond to stress very, very easily. But what happened is I never released it throughout the time. I just stored it and stored it and stored it. And our bodies are not vessels that are meant for storage. We're not a storage container. We are meant to take energy in, use it the way we're supposed to use it, and then let it go. When you take years and years and decades of storing either the same emotion or different versions of that emotion, or even different emotions, and you store it and store it, it will always catch up to you, and you will have a lot more work to do. And honestly, what happened to me is it manifested in physical symptoms. I started getting really, really tired. I had adrenal fatigue. I couldn't get out of bed. I started getting depressed. My anxiety started like going through the roof. I had serious burnout. I couldn't focus on anything anymore. I could barely have a conversation. And that's when I was like, whoa, what is happening to me? Like, this all started happening to me when I was like 27. And I'm like, I am way too young to be experiencing all of these things. So of course I went the medicinal route and the medical route where I was like, okay, what is happening to me on a physical level? But I was avoiding what was happening to me on an emotional level, which is like the coding of our bodies. I wasn't dealing with those emotions, and I wasn't understanding that I was harboring like everything from that point forward, right? So it's really beautiful when we truly understand to get into that emotional side of us and say like, everything we feel is okay and it's normal and it's beautiful. When we can learn to step into that side of things, we step into more an abundant source and a more of a positive reframed lens that we look through. And it also shapes the way that people look at us. Because when we say like, look, my anger is beautiful and my sadness is beautiful, but also my joy and my positivity, my abundance is beautiful as well. It's all equal. People look at us in a different way. That's where you look at people and you're like, wow, they are like, have you ever met someone where they light up the room the minute they walk in and you're just like, oh my God, I want to be that person so bad. But then you get to know them on a level, and they are also like that when they're sad, and they're also like that when they feel all of the emotions. It's like such a beautiful thing. And so that's what I'm trying to describe, is a person who is lit up at all times because they allow themselves to feel their emotions. But what happens is they feel their emotions, deal with them, release them, and then move to the next emotion. What most people happen, and most of my clients, is they feel all the high emotions, but they don't truly feel them. But then when they get to the low emotions, they stay stuck in them. So those low emotions stay a really long time because they're not being dealt with, because what they're also not dealing with is the high emotions too. They're not allowing themselves to feel all of the emotions to the full spectrum.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what I'm teaching people, is to live a more fulfilled life by feeling your way through it rather than thinking.
Right. And that it's safe to actually feel those negative emotions, that it doesn't have to be a scary thing. And I actually feel like by trying to avoid it, it just becomes this big scary thing. You turn it into a monster because you're always just trying to like ignore it and cover it up and hide it. And I think, you know, with mental illness and stigma, it's always been difficult to address these issues and talk about it. So I love the fact that, you know, as terrible as 2020 has been for a lot of people, and a lot of devastating things have happened, in the same way, there's a silver lining that mental health issues have really, really been brought, you know, to the forefront. And we're more comfortable talking about it because everybody's dealing with it now. It's not just people that have high anxiety. It's everybody's feeling anxiety on some level, in some way, shape, or form. And we're not equipped to deal with this kind of prolonged anxious state or depressive state. And I think it's more important than ever for anybody and everybody to understand how to deal with their emotions, because it affects everything.
Yeah, and I think it got so normalized in 2020 because we were forced into stillness. We were forced to, no one could like busy themselves with work anymore because no one was really working. We were quarantined. Like I lived in Seattle at the time through most of 2020, and we were completely shut down. So we were forced to stay inside. You know, we were literally forced by external forces to sit with ourselves. And what happens when you sit with yourself is you get real uncomfortable if you don't know how to deal with it and if there's no one there to hold space. So it became normalized because everyone started realizing, whoa, like with maybe even to the point of where some people weren't even aware of it, and they might become aware of it by listening to this, is that they were forced to sit with themselves and sit with their emotions, and they felt for the first time, they felt.
Yeah.
And they didn't understand that. And I mean, I felt it too. Like there were a lot of things in 2020 that I had to feel, that I was forced to feel, that were really hard for me. And I know a lot of people went through this too, because I've seen it, I've talked to people about it, I've heard about it, you know, it's all over social media. But that's why it became so normal, because everyone was going through it. And when everyone's going through something, people talk about it. And it's okay to talk about it.
It's okay to talk about it.
Yeah, it's okay to talk about it, but people feel safety in numbers. No one wants to be that lone ranger who's like, I am feeling this by myself. And people are like, yeah, I don't get you. But when the collective is feeling the similar thing, it becomes safety, because now all of a sudden you have a support group of other people who are like, yeah, I feel that way too. Yeah, I feel that way too. Yeah, I feel that way too. So it's a really beautiful awakening that we came to, not even understanding our emotions, but feeling the emotion on a spectrum, because it allowed the collective of human beings to be comfortable and emoting themselves, even if they weren't comfortable with that, you know? And that's where we saw a lot of the rage and a lot of the anger and a lot of the frustration too, and the sadness and the depression, because so many people were busying themselves with, I need to go to the gym, I need to go grocery shopping, I need to go do this errand, I need to go do this for my kids, I need to go do that activity for everyone else, because that is the easy way out. And like you said before, when it's like a snowball rolling down a hill, you can't expect it to not get bigger if you ignore it, right? You can let the snowball roll down the hill, and if you don't catch it at the end of it, it's going to be a lot bigger than when you started. And that's what happens with our emotions, is when we start to busy ourselves with everything externally, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's what happened in 2020, is our emotions got so big, stored inside of us, that they came out. And I'm so happy too that mental health and all of that came out to be a normalization, because it's such a beautiful topic, and it's not something that we should hide from. And it's not something that we should say is like, oh, we can't feel those things, or we can't be normal like that, because it's something that we should be able to share with everyone. We should allow ourselves to be vulnerable in that way. And that's where confidence comes from. That's where bravery comes from, is through being ultimately vulnerable and authentic.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. Like, you know, if I think back 2 years ago, I was like, there was maybe a few people that were close to me that knew what I was dealing with, but I was like so afraid of being found out. I didn't want to admit. And as someone that was running my own business for a couple of years, and trying to be very present on social media, it was a huge issue for me. And part of why I started looking into mindset work was because I thought there was something professionally that I was missing. I thought, you know, if I just have one more skill, if I can just figure out how to get this certification, if I could just get to this point, then I'll be worthy enough to like present myself as you know, an expert, or as you know, a professional in the industry that I'm in. But as I went through all those, like as I learned more and got certified and like just watched podcasts and listened to everything, I realized that it was not a professional like skill or strategy that I was missing. It was actually just being real with myself about what I was feeling, and the fear of you know, part imposter syndrome. But also just, I don't want people to know that I struggle. I don't want people to know that that things don't come easy, or that I deal with anxiety or depression, because they will see me as less. They'll think I'm unreliable. They'll like, why would anybody like hire me? Because then why would you, right? If you think that somebody can't fulfill a task. And I think it's you know, I've seen so many people come out throughout 2020, and we've seen like super high functioning people with anxiety. We've seen like all kind, like a rainbow variations of where anxiety and depression fit, and it's clear that there's no like cookie cutter. There's no one size fits all, and I think that's what's great about like so many of the mind body ways of dealing with it, like whether it's like CBT or breath work, like what you do, or like I even started, I took a course on Reiki because I thought like I could learn how to heal myself through energy. And I didn't know what energy was. Like, obviously I know what energy is on a basic level, but I didn't truly understand what energy was and what energy work was. And I think a lot, going back to the woo woo, a lot of people think that when you get into spirituality, that there's no scientific reason behind how things work. And I don't know, I feel like that's been, I've found that there's certain people I can talk to about it and certain people that I can't. And it all depends on what their beliefs are and what their background is and what they've experienced. But when you actually experience something, then you realize it's so simple, it's so basic, it's literally as basic as breathing. But as you said, it's doing it with purpose, doing it intently, and understanding how to do it. And you know, even though we're born breathing and we breathe every day of our lives, we really don't understand how to use it to our benefit.
Yeah, and that whole thing of what you said all goes back to a root problem of A, not feeling safe within yourself, and B, not feeling safe. And because you don't feel safe with yourself, you don't feel safe with anyone else. So that entire thing is about safety. Mm-hmm. And when we don't feel safe within ourselves, we have trouble being vulnerable. We have trouble asking for help. We have trouble emoting. We have trouble admitting to ourselves that we need help. And not even help as in like, hi, I'm helpless, I need help, but just asking for support and asking to be like, you know what, I am overloaded today. Can you do this one thing for me? You know, that's asking for help. Just being like, I cannot handle one more thing today. Do you think that you could take care of that for me? And that's being vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And when we go back to allowing ourselves to feel safe like that, our brain kicks in. And especially when we have a wiring of survival mode, our brain kicks in and says, no. Like, it is not safe to ask for help. It is not safe to step outside of yourself. You need to do this all by yourself because it won't get done unless you do it. And that's your brain just trying to protect you. And until we learn how to separate those two things and become aware of this nasty roommate who's just taking up free rent and saying like, okay, like, I hear you, I see you, but we're okay. We can ask for help. It's totally cool. We're not going to die. That's just this logical thinking that we have. And a lot of people too, when they hear about not even spirituality, but just other modalities like breath work or like meditation or like, you know, the spiritual sense of healing, energy work, they don't understand the logical part of it. And that's just because they don't feel safe in the unknown. They don't feel safe in not understanding a logical, like, okay, A, B, C, this is exactly result and cause and effect, because that's their survival wiring. Until someone actually sits down and I say, look, just do this and tell me how you feel afterwards. Just be very logical about it. Do this breath, tell me how you feel. Until they really understand and just try it for themselves, that's where they learn to make that shift, because it is so simple. It is simple as just breathing in and out. But because a lot of people, the more logical people, need that as feeling safe. They need the answers to feel safe within themselves, because that is their safety net. That is their support. The answers are their support. But really, in all reality, our body is the true healer. And that is something that we should use as a support. We should use getting into ourselves and sitting with ourselves and trusting ourselves and using that as our safety net to move forward. Because once you can unlock that, and you can unlock being able to sit with yourself and say, I feel safe. I'm okay. Like, it's all good to ask for help. It's all good to say, I am really stressed out today. Like, I'm going to be safe doing that.
Mm-hmm.
That's when we can move through life in a more grounded state. And, it's not for everyone. I'm not here for everyone, right? Like, I'm here for the people who are ready for it and who are ready to take an alternate way of thinking. And that's why we're here too, to have this conversation, to bring awareness to other people, because slowly on their own time, they're going to say, I think I'm going to try this out.
Yeah. And you have to be ready for it. Like, there's things I knew about meditation like 20 years ago, but it took me so long to actually start. And even from the first ever meditation retreat I ever did to now, like there was so many phases of understanding that I had. Like I think the first 2 retreats I did, I literally sat there like what we talked about earlier, where I was just like, okay, what do I do now? Am I doing this right? Like, is it working? Like, your mind is just like thinking about so many things, right? And then it was when I actually went to the 10-day retreat, we had to take a vow of silence. And the scariest thing about a vow of silence is you are facing yourself. You like, when you don't communicate with another human being for 10 days, it is so profound, the insight that you have about your own self, because there's no escape. Like, we weren't even allowed to have like a book with a pen to write on. And it's not for like the reason for that rule is because you have to face yourself. Like, it really forces you to face yourself and to really look within yourself. And you don't always like what you see, and like what you said earlier, it's not always linear. And it took me a long time to understand and accept that. I think for people, when they start healing, that's one of the most difficult things, because at first you really think like, something really important will be fixed for you, or like a mindset shift will happen. You're like, okay, this is good. I like it. Like, you're on kind of a high, right? You're like, okay, this is working. I love it. And then like you hit your first roadblock after that, and you think, I'm not fixed. Everything's wrong. Like, you just like all of that anxiety like spirals back down, and you think, okay, clearly I'm not fixed. It's not going to work for me. And you panic. But what I'd love to get some insight from you, because I think this is an issue a lot of people deal with when their progress is up and down like that. How do you, what are some strategies or reminders you can have to help with that?
The first reminder would be that it's okay to ride out the entire wave of the emotion, because like I said earlier, emotions are fleeting. They come and go. They move around. They go up and they go back down, and they go up and they go back down. But essentially, through healing work and through energy work, what we're trying to do is, it's always going to go up and down. But what we want to do is go up and down and up and down and up and down in a forward motion like this. We're still always going to be going up and down, but we want it to be going further up. So when we take a tool like breathwork into it and put it into our toolbox, when we know everything's going great and we're like awesome and we feel great, that's how I take my clients through it. I don't say, okay, so every single day you have to sit down and do breathwork, because breathwork isn't something that we want to use as an addiction. We don't want to use it in replacement of, this is what I need to heal, right? We don't want to use it like that. That would be using breathwork in a negative way. What we want to do is place discernment within ourselves and within our bodies and say, you know what, I'm riding out and I'm great right now. And I might not need breathwork that much. Maybe I only need it once this week. Maybe I don't need it at all. And then when you're in the low, that's when you can really bring in that breath work and say, okay, you know what? I've been hitting a triggering spot. I need it more this week. I might need it every day this week. I might only need it like 4 times this week. And that's where I teach my clients, like, okay, so do you need a really deep session because you're avoiding a root problem and a root problem came up for you and you got triggered? Or is this just something like, oh my gosh, like I'm feeling really overwhelmed and I need to clear something really quickly? So I teach them how to really move through that. And that's where my integrative comes in, and that's where my meditative comes in, because the meditative are the ones that we really go in deep and we're digging up that root problem and we're processing it. The integrative is like, okay, like I've had a day today and I need to just do breath work. And sometimes you're using integrative only in the entire week and you're doing it like 20 times a day. You're like, oh my God, I've done so much breath work today, right? So it's something that we really want to use. And I can actually do, I can do a blend on here right now. That's a really good one that if you're feeling really overwhelmed throughout your day, to just do. So it's called a power breath. It's probably one of my favorite ones because it's a way when you're feeling extremely overwhelmed to just get it out and re-energize your system and almost kind of like change you around. So essentially what you're doing is you're only going to be breathing through your mouth, and you're going to do a forced inhale and a forced exhale. But when you're exhaling, you want to snap your belly in, and you really want to only concentrate on that exhale. So the inhale isn't as important. You still want it to be forced, but it's not as important as the exhale. So I'll show you how that looks. You really want to snap that belly in to force that exhale out, but you want the breathing to be very continual. But no matter how silly you look, no matter how you do it, it's going to be fine. So I'll do it with you.
Yeah.
Ready? Keep going. Allow yourself to just experience it and just focus on snapping that belly in as you're exhaling. That's all you want to focus on, is just snap the belly in. Beautiful. Beautiful. You are totally safe. You're totally supported. Beautiful. Relax your mouth just a little bit as you're doing that. There you go. And when you're ready, take a big deep breath in through your nose. Hold it at the top. Hold it for as long as you possibly can. And then when you feel like you want to let it go, just try to hold on to it a little bit longer. Really stretch yourself. And whenever you're ready, you can let it go through your mouth. Try to hold on to it for as long as you possibly can and stretch yourself until you literally can't anymore.
I'm like sweating over here.
Yeah, I know. I feel it too. I feel like really hot.
Yeah, it's like, I guess all that energy flowing through your body, it really gets everything, like, I don't know, activated, right?
Yeah. So to circle back to what we were talking about, when I was on that low point, this is the one I use the most because it helps me the best, and it re-energizes and resets me. So I will do this throughout my day. So that blend, I will take the power breath. I will do that 50 times. I will do it 50 times of the power breath in one session, and I will do that 3 times over. So I do those rounds of 50 3 times, and at the end of it, I will do that top hold, take a deep breath in through my nose, hold it top, and then let it all go. And that's what I work through, and it goes pretty quick. But that's essentially how I reset myself, and I use it all the time, and I love it. So that's how we can write out that emotion. We can say, okay, when I'm feeling really good, I don't really need to do that much because I feel great. And but what I do is when I'm feeling really awesome, or when my clients are feeling really awesome, I make them really sit with that feeling and get really present and say, okay, like, I'm feeling really good, but how is that feeling in my body? What does this feeling, like, how does that feel energetically? And I make them connect to their heart, and I really make them connect, like, as they're sitting here, as you're sitting here right now, you can connect to your heart while you're listening to me, really tune into that. And you should start to feel it kind of tingle, and it should either start tingling in your feet or in your hands. And if you bring awareness to wherever it starts tingling as you're listening to me, you will feel the entire energy in your whole body. It takes time to practice it. You might only feel it in some places at first, but the more you become aware of, okay, this joy makes me feel this way. And if you tap into that energy, that tingling feeling, you start to feel really, really alive. And expands that joy. It expands that happiness because you're allowing that safety of that happiness and that joy to expand. So then when I take in breath work on their emotional really low, I say, sit with it the same way.
Mhm.
Take your sadness and connect with yourself and really figure out, like, it's not even about why do I feel this way, but it's about how do I feel this way? I feel sadness. And what is that eliciting in my body? What does my body feel like through this emotion and through all of the other emotions? And then that's when they use breath work the most, to catapult them back up into a higher place so that they are moving in a linear place like this rather than going down. We don't want to go in a downward spiral. We want to go in an upward spiral, even though we're going up and down and up and down, up that spiral, right? So what I tell people is to use that breath blend a lot because it gives them something to focus on and catapult through into that next stage of the other emotion, because whatever comes from a low, the next point is a high.
I love that that you shared that with us, because I already feel like some of the tension in my body like release a bit.
If people are wanting to have more questions or anything, to feel free to reach out to me. I do have private coaching clients right now. So I do have some spots available that if people are really resonating with this message that we've been talking about and they want to dive deeper into it, I have an area on my Instagram, and I think it's on my Facebook too, but I can send you the link to book a discovery call with me. And during that discovery call, what we do is I talk to people about what's going on. I walk them through a 10 to 15 minute meditative breathwork session. And then after that, it's a decision call. So by the end of that call, we will understand if we're the right fit to work together, how I can help you, and how we can move forward, or if I need to refer you out to someone else that I think is a better fit for you. So if that's really resonating with people, I want to encourage them to fully reach out to me, even if they just have questions, even if they just want to run things by me and create an open conversation. I want to say that I'm here as a massive support and holding big energy for people.